Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is now time for the prince to step off of his throne and go down for the tavern and some drinking at Moe's, baby, to be everything we always wanted to be. Yeah, I am very happy to be here as Drew Hood, DH in 4K.
This is Drinkin at NWA, where we talk about the pros of pro wrestling in the Midwest while sipping on some brews with blessed beers and wrestling. That's my scene. Death matches and lucha libre, it's also mean. I'm a straight up smart goofball, not no kiss ass. I stand tall when it comes to wrestling. I'm the king. I know every move, every fling. Get ready for a wild time with Drinkin at Moe's, where we don't quit. Drinkin at Moe's, that's where it's at, like a power bomb. We hit hard, never flat. Fucking right, we're living the dream. Talking about wrestling, always a scream.
All right, everybody, taking time out before we get this show started. I want to thank Reaper Apparel for having Drinkin' Emos be a brand ambassador for their clothing line. They got good stuff. They got t-shirts, they got hoodies, they got beanies, they got lots of great stuff, encouraging everybody to break out of their comfort zone, live their best self, and hey, it's something I try to live every day. Now, be sure when you go and you're filling out your order, use the code drinkinatmos, get 10% off, and the link and the code will both be in the description. Let's fucking go. All right, got the button that damn time. Hey, everybody, it's Drinkin' Mo, Big Mo here. You know the drill by now. YouTube, like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good shit, because YouTube's algorithm is a pain in the ass. Yes, I'm not monetized yet, so I don't got to worry about the fucking cussing. Yay for me. But today I'm excited to have with me Drew Hood. How you doing?
I am doing phenomenal. I am doing really great. I'm exhausted, but then again, who isn't these days? How are you doing today?
Oh, I can't complain too much other than some craziness that happened at work. Yeah. I'm literally okay. I've been telling more and more people because I mean the news is already out there. My wife and I are expecting, and they are going to be inducing her right around Christmas time.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
The most stressful time of the year, too. That's insane. That's crazy.
Yeah. But I'm excited because, you know, we've been through a loss before with and this time we're having a boy, and I actually had the idea that I've told a few people about with a plush toy that looked like a cartoonish version of the last Bray Wyatt run.
Okay.
And I was gonna take a picture of my son with it, or me with him with it. One way or the other, and tag it. Welcome to the world, little Firefly, and then tag JoJo and stuff in it.
I love that so much. I endorsed fully. I support this idea 1,000%.
So hell, the toy is already waiting up in what's going to be his room.
Beautiful.
Have it waiting and ready to go. But before we get into too much about me, we're here about you. And you know, first thing I'd like to ask everybody: what got you started as a fan, and then what got you deciding to make that leap into the business?
So what got me started as a fan for professional wrestling, and more so sports entertainment, because of course that's what WWE recognized itself as the time.
Yeah.
Well, it was friends of mine who actually came over to my house, and they were just shifting through the website, and I had seen some wrestling on TV here and there. I had gone to Toys R Us with my parents when I was younger, of course. And if anybody doesn't know what Toys R Us is, that is so painful. Oh God!
Hell, they got one in the Mall of America now.
Bet. Beautiful. Okay. Not outdated. Got it. Okay, sick. And the wrestling toys are in there, and I'm seeing The Rock and Kane and Undertaker. And of course, little me, little Drew is just looking at these things and going, what is that? And my parents, who are very supportive of me now, I don't want any ideas of like they hate wrestling, they hate that I'm a wrestler, but they would look at me and say, no, just keep moving, let's go look at Legos, let's go look at something else. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, sure. I would see it sporadically on TV, and I was always so interested and curious, but I just didn't really have any guidance on it because I'm an only child. So it wasn't
Yeah.
really easy for me to be like, oh, well, my brother or sister watches wrestling and, that sort of thing. And I didn't really
Yeah.
have any friends growing up who were wrestling fans either. It just so happened that one day, again, backtracking, they came over to my house and they were looking at the website, and I was like, oh, is that what this is? And they're like, yeah, it's pro wrestling. I was like, cool. And they started watching promo videos and skits and all these other things.
Mhm.
I'm going, this is wild. This is such a crazy looking world. I love this. And literally, as soon as that sleepover was done, I started TiVoing and recording Raw, SmackDown, ECW, just everything I could get my hands on. Um, for those of you youngins who may hear this and be like, wait, really? We used to hang out at the mall. That used to be a big thing. And we would go to the DVD stores and we would look through all these old DVDs and we would pick out like 2 or 3 each. And then we would trade those DVDs around and we would watch them all through. And it was just such an obsession from like the get go. As soon as I could sink my teeth into it, it was over. Which eventually, fast forward through a bunch of everything, a bunch of life, a bunch of years, I made the jump to wanting to actually perform in about 2018. And the reason why was because I turned 25 that year. Sorry, I'm losing my mind here. 24, 25 that year. And it hit me that I had always said that I wanted to at least try it or at least do it. And, you can verbally out loud say, I can do this, but words without action mean nothing. So I said, let me pack up my things and move, which for a guy like me is really hard because I like stability. I like being able to, have a lot of like, oh, this is set and I know and I'm okay. That was one of the biggest and first times where I just took the leap and said, I have to do this. So I moved out to a western part of North Carolina and started training, and the rest is history from there.
Nice. I love hearing the origin stories about all that. And, everybody has their own little story, sometimes having to move a little further than others. But, that especially, okay, I'm dating myself, 41 years old. Growing up, like when you would actually hear about a wrestling school, it was sometimes quite a ways away.
Yep.
Now it's a little easier. It seems like no matter what region of the country you're in, there's a reputable school somewhere in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I know for me getting started watching, it was, cousins and an uncle of mine, and then I ended up being really one of the only ones that stuck with it. And independent wrestling, knew nothing about it until I was in the Navy in San Diego, and that just boom, I literally looked up pro wrestling in San Diego, and then boom, there popped up a show, and I'm like, I'm going to that.
Absolutely.
And hell, I'm still friends with a lot of them to this day. And, that the other thing that I got introduced to down there was, how, some of the guys down there came up with, in-ring personas, because I got introduced to, some people might be different ways and different promotions. It was, for me, not knowing that aspect of independent wrestling was kind of wild, because I'm like, wait a minute, I just saw that guy somewhere else and he was a good guy, he was doing this, but now he's there to, okay, this is wild. And I kind of enjoyed that, because you get different tastes everywhere. And yeah, I thought about, the in-ring aspect, but after some scaffolding fell on me in the Navy, that didn't end up ever going to happen.
Mm.
But going back to the whole in-ring persona part, how did you come up with yours? Because everybody has, their own story with it. My personal favorite, the only person in my collection back here has their own spot, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I loved hearing about how the Stone Cold persona came about, and it was literally him watching like a serial killer documentary, and then his wife at the time said something about drinking some hot drink before it got stone cold, and then boom, off to the races.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come up with yours? Because I know the first little bit can be a bit of a feeling out process.
Absolutely. For me, it didn't really happen for the first few years. So I've been wrestling about 6 years now, and I really started to find more traction, I'd say about like halfway through that. So about like 3 years in. Someone that I wrestled, his name's Ethan Case. He's based out of South Carolina. He has his own school, Palm Mountain Wrestling Academy. He was someone that when I discovered independent wrestling and went to my first independent wrestling show, he was on the show, and I just thought he was really entertaining. He was super talented, and just became one of my independent wrestling favorites. I finally got to have a match with him in November of 2020, and I said, dubbed him like the metaphorical king of sports entertainment. And for the match, I said I was going to dethrone him or whatever. We had the match. I ended up winning. And afterwards, he grabbed the mic and he said, while you may not be the king, you're certainly a well-worthy prince. So Prince of Sports Entertainment was born then. Now, there are going to be some people that may hear this and say, but don't you have like 40,000 different nicknames? Yes, I do. Because growing up, I gravitate very heavily towards the larger than life, super charismatic guys. I know everybody there's the work rate guys, there's the talkers, there's everybody's different flavors of what they like. I am so into guys that can talk. I am so into like what they bring to the table because I feel like I can personify that just, on that level one day. And for me, a lot of my favorites, Rock, Austin, etc. How many catchphrases and nicknames did they have? Oh my God. Like that, that's why they had like 20 different t-shirts at one time, because if you say something, it's like you're Austin 316, if you smell, just like everything. But the Brahma Bull, and they just, they would go through their own nicknames while introducing themselves. And I thought, well, I can do that too. So I called myself not only the Prince of Sports Entertainment, but conductor of the Hood Hype Train. I called myself the man, myth, and legend in the making. I called myself, and it just continued and snowballed from there. Recently, of course, this year, more so than anything else, with the leaps and bounds I've been able to make with my career, I've understood that it's not super marketable on an independent level because you need to have a more defined persona. You need to have a more able to travel around and go to different shows persona. And if you give a different crowd that you've never been in front of before 10,000 different nicknames and personas of characters, they're going to be like, who are you? What are you doing? I'm not grasping the concept here. So I've very heavily recently this year leaned into the Prince of Sports Entertainment. And, you mentioned, it's funny, you mentioned earlier going to different independent shows and seeing people do different works and performing differently or saying different things or just being different people in general. I have the blessing / curse or luxury, however you want to look at it, of being the bad guy everywhere. Maybe it's just by the way my face looks. Maybe it's just the way I carry myself that everybody just can't stand me. But I am able to just be the Prince of Sports Entertainment without really changing much and just go. So I thought it was funny that you brought that up. And it made me think, I guess it is a blessing and a curse that I get to say I'm literally just me on every single show that I'm on right now.
Hey, you know what? Those are the characters that seem to, really resonate with people. They can sense that authenticity. And I know, much like, you mentioned about, being a fan of those guys that can talk, I very much similar, but I more so now I gravitate towards those really intense personas, whether it be on the mic, in the ring,
Mhm.
whatever. You just you can just sense by looking at them when they're in the ring or on the mic that like if you got on their wrong side, they could literally rip your head off.
Mhm.
And hell, that goes back to some of my favorites from the past. Growing up, like Bruiser Brody was always
Mhm.
well.
Mm.
When I was younger, he scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, yeah.
But looking back on matches now, I'm like, oh my god, I love that guy.
Mhm.
And that goes right along with their. He could talk, but you could also sense when he did in promos and vignettes or whatever that
Mhm.
you get on his wrong side, he'll rip your damn head off.
Yeah.
And I gravitate towards some of those people that kind of remind me of him now, like a Lance Archer or oh god, there's so many others, but Lance Archer jumps to mind because I've actually met the guy before, so
Right.
I love getting to watch him. And one place that I actually put in my notes together, I saw you pop up at that. It's not as you know out there as AEW or WWE, but
Mhm.
they're still like a well-respected name in the business, and they're kind of going back to the territory days somewhat with the
Mhm.
NWA.
Yeah.
And I saw you know a former JCP Openweight champ, and I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, because going to like New Japan and the never open weight title,
Mhm.
and one of my personal favorites, a former champ, Tomohiro Ishii, seeing him with that, I love that open weight style because you can get those David versus Goliath sort of matches and not have it be like no disrespect to uh, Rey Mysterio or whatever, but you know I guess there's that believability factor that you could end up with that, and who knows? It doesn't matter. Although,
Mhm.
hell, the thing that gets me with the open weight titles
Mhm.
that can be kind of confusing, I guess, is in the wrestling business, there isn't, it doesn't seem to be as, you know, oh, what's a good way to put this? How when the cruiserweight division was like a big first thing, they seem to, heavily put out, weight limits and this and that. And that doesn't seem to be a thing anymore. But I do enjoy the matches. What was it like for you with the NWA and, your experience there? Because like I said, they're going back to the territories of, different affiliate promotions and then the big national champions coming into different places.
Right. I appreciate very much so the idea of doing territories again. So I do support that aspect of what NWA is doing. Um, Whenever I was their champion, ever so briefly, just for a few months there, for mostly the summer, I won it from Toby Farley in April, and that match, he's been to Japan. He's a Southern Strong style guy, so that was a heavy hitting kind of
Mm-hmm.
match. The title match that I lost, the Openweight Championship in, was against a guy named Tyler Shoup, who is a guy coming out of Tennessee. Super freaking talented, super, like, really good out of, Pritchard School. And he's so technically gifted. And he's just, he's like a very classic, really athletic kind of guy. So, two very different matches. And I like the idea as well of open weight championships because you get a mix of styles. You can have, your hitters, you can have your technicals, you can have your high flyers, you can have everything. So it's like you get all your little ice cream flavors of professional wrestling within that division. But
you know, that is, not to interrupt you, that is kind of where I was wanting to lean towards in my description of it, but I'm like, total brain fart going on as I was trying to say it, but you describe it perfectly.
right.
You get the mix of styles without having to have like, a certain division for this style or that. Everybody.
And I think it just wrestling goes through cycles and it evolves, and it evolves, but it's kind of, everyone knows that whole metaphor. But like with different divisions, because cruiserweights at one time were anybody under 230 pounds. But now, it's like 205 Live made cruiserweights 205 and under. So anybody above that, I guess, was classified as like heavyweight or, like light heavyweight, middle heavyweight, and just whatever else. I know a lot of mixed martial arts like UFC have like featherweights and light heavyweights and stuff like that. I think with wrestling, because there's just such a huge spectrum of different styles now, that confining everybody into those specifics would be a little bit more limiting than people would want. And that's not just us as wrestlers, but that's also, fans. Fans don't want to see necessarily, certain divisions because they, fans are very, it's not a short attention span thing, right? But if they see the same style match every show, they're going to stop watching. So it's very much so a necessity, I think, these days to mix up everybody. That way you get less of a hands here or hands on your phone, or, you just see fans not getting involved because they're like, oh, well, we're just seeing the two high flyers again, and we saw that for the past 3 shows, whatever. Oh, we've already seen the 2 big hosses beating each other, meat slapping meat or whatever the
big meaty men slapping meat.
Yeah, we've seen it. We want to see David versus Goliath. We want to see this high flyer versus this technical guy. We want to see this, and this. So I think because of, again, all the situations and the environments we're in these days, you have to. Like, you just have to mix everybody because divisions used to work, but I feel like now it's tried and true that a mix is best for business because that's where you really get into it.
Oh yeah, those shows that really resonate with people are the ones that have a little bit of something for everybody. It's like not a bad thing to like, okay, go into divisions and stuff. Yeah, you have those for like, okay, having those certain types of matches, but then being able to bring everybody together into one. And give for at least that match, giving you, it could be a whole mix of whatever, different styles meeting up that maybe wouldn't normally meet up in a standard match.
Right.
Well, I love it. And the thing that's great about the independent scene today, and I want your opinion on this, is with some of the big names that get released from whatever promotion, that they're able to prove that the independent scene can be a very viable option for just about anybody. And that getting released from a WWE or an AEW today isn't the death nail in the coffin of a wrestling career that for a long time people thought that was the case. Like, you get released, your career is done. And with people like, going back to the NWA and stuff, Matt Cardona, perfect example, like the embodiment of, of just that getting released from WWE isn't the death nail, and you can make just about as much money, if not more, on the independent scene if you really bust your ass.
It is that last part though. It is way more of a grind than people think. It is constant. I don't even think I'm working as hard as I could be or should be on an independent level, right? Because there's some weeks where I'm like, I'm just not making as much as I would like to here, or I'm just, whatever other situations. But it's so cool to see that wrestling's in a boom period, but it's not just TV. It's, independent shows. It's, bigger indies, smaller indies, or just like, your steps going into your bigger promotions like your MLWs and then your AEWs and WWEs and stuff like that. It just seems like everybody's firing on all cylinders, which is phenomenal because, and this is where I have to say publicly, I dislike tribalism a lot.
Oh, same.
You can like what you want, but you don't have to hate on the other stuff. Just like what you want, support what you like, but just don't pay any attention to what you don't. Because in that instance, if you stop bringing the negativity to a different business that you may not exactly support or like, if you stop bringing the negativity, then mostly only positivity is coming from it, and positivity brings or breeds success rather. So it just brings better business for everybody. So I see a lot more positivity these days, not just from the fans, but from locker rooms as well. Everybody seems to be on a good level of understanding that, yes, this is a business and yes, we need to keep it professional, but also we can still stay safe and have fun doing so. And you don't have to drag everybody down in order to do it anymore. And I've had a few friends, one guy that comes to mind, Fuego del Sol, who got NWA, has been killing it on the independents. Ever since he got released, he's just been pushing as hard as he can. And I haven't seen him fall off once. Even after getting released, this man has still built up such a great reputation for himself as a hard worker that I feel like a contract's in his future, and it's a near future kind of thing, right? Like,
oh yeah.
So it's one of those things where you can take it as a defeat if you lose the contract, you lose your spot, and you're just not there anymore. Like, you can take it as a defeat, or you can do what the grinders do and the hustlers do and really push for it and really like dive into your work, so to speak, and dedicate yourself to it. And usually whenever you do that, success turns up, and usually, not every time, but usually contracts follow. So
oh yeah,
the more you put into it, the more you get out of it.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And I was just thinking, using that, getting released, using that as the motivation to be like, you know what? I'm going to bust my ass even harder and make those guys wonder why they ever released me in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh God, I've been lucky enough to meet Matt Cardona and, oh God, there's been so many other people that, thinking back, like, I love looking back at some of my collection back here and getting inspiration from like Swerve, when he would everything that happened with WWE, he just busted his ass even further, and just look at where he's at now. And Fuego, definitely a perfect example. Somebody that I would love to actually have on the podcast at some point. Mm-hmm. Like, I got a growing list of people that I'm like, oh God, I'd love to have them. And sometimes my memory gets a little fuzzy after inching very close to 300 episodes. And I actually just recorded the one that I am going to use for my 300th with a cheeseburger.
Ooh, beautiful.
And because I made my commentary debut, and he happened to be one half of the main event, and that led into that. And I'm just like, cheeseburger is another example, sticking it out with the Ring of Honor and New Japan and everything. And then, the uncertainty of when it got sold to Tony Khan and, who's going to get used, who isn't. But he's out there busting his ass. He's got his school. When we scheduled that recording, it was to try to get it in before he made another tour over to Europe. So it's like he's doing just fine. So
Yeah.
another example right there. You just bust your ass and you'll be fine if you don't let it get to you.
Oh, 1,000%. And on the days that you're most tired too, are the days where you got to put in that extra work. Like today, for example, for me, recording on this Wednesday, I woke up, went to work from about 8:30 to 1, went to the gym immediately after, came home, ate, and then went back to my second shift at work. And then I got home, and then 10 minutes later, I hopped on here to do this interview. So even when your days are nonstop, you got to keep going.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
just laying in bed and, just sitting around and doing that, you're not accomplishing anything. You just got to push. You got to keep going.
Oh,
Even when you're exhausted, you got to keep going.
oh God, yeah. Nope. I get that completely. I mean, I'm gonna have to when my son gets here. I'm gonna have to end up toning down the intensity of my recording schedule for obvious reasons. I'm not gonna stop by all means,
Right.
but I literally had times where it was like Monday through Friday every day. I I live in Omaha, Nebraska. I work in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I have to get up and get out the door by like, I was trying to think, 6:20 is about the time in the morning that I'm like out the door. I get back, and then sometimes I would record within like hour or so of getting back home, and then then I'm right back at it the next day. And yeah, I try not to do that too often anymore because goddamn burnout is real.
Oh, facts. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And especially right now, talking about North Carolina and that whole area, good lord, getting hit with all sorts of shit right now. I actually just watched, trying to think, on Instagram, it was Dax and Adam Copeland. I was about to say Edge doing a thing for how to give to people having a lot of difficulties right now, because damn, those you don't really hear too much about the Carolinas and hurricanes. Like I didn't before the last few years, but now some of these, it's like they're just getting worse and worse. And hopefully you're not being affected too much.
So I was very much so blessed to and luckily been away from it all. I'm based out of the Triangle or Raleigh, North Carolina. So we just went through some bad winds and some bad rain, and heavy thunder and lightning and everything else. But Asheville and the western part of North Carolina got hit very, very hard. So we've all tried our best to contact all of our friends and family out there to make sure everybody's okay. We've all tried to send in supplies. Money's being raised and donated very generously by people. Everybody that I know, luckily, I was able to get in contact with. So that's a great thing. But there's also people that, unfortunately, were not able to. So
yeah,
it's rough, but we can help, and people can help as long as they donate time and effort into it. Right now, I know too, with the hurricane down in Florida being Category 5 and being as intense as it is, lots of thoughts and prayers and good vibes to everybody down there. It's a really bad hurricane season as predicted earlier this year, and I don't think anybody was really, unfortunately, prepared for it because it just seems like everything's just getting messier and messier and worse and worse. So hopefully concentrated efforts to make things better, actively make things better, and thoughts and everything else for everybody that's going through.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I've been lucky enough that most of the people that I know down in Florida and everything I've been hearing that they're fine, so I'm definitely thankful there. And part of my Navy career was actually in Pensacola, and I was right in the, right towards the end of hurricane season that year was when I got there. So when I'm seeing all sorts of stuff now, it's like, oh, geez, I hate seeing it. But hopefully, anybody that can help is, I know they just had one of the radio stations here in Omaha, as of this recording, had a stuff the truck event, and they like had a big semi that was actually, I think they just left this morning, that they just filled with all sorts of stuff that they're sending out that way. So that is awesome. And well, you know what, to kind of go and end on a happier note,
Right.
I got two categories here. The first one's a bit of a name game where I name off some people, you give me some quick thoughts on them, and I try to theme it towards the guests as much as possible. And, each of these, we talked about the Carolinas. Each of these people has been billed from North Carolina. They made a name for themselves there and huge in wrestling from that part of the country. So first two actually are pairs. First one, I don't think, talking about a tag team from North Carolina, that actually both of these, but I would have to name both of them. First one, Matt and Jeff, the Hardys.
They helped revolutionize tag team wrestling along with the Dudley Boys and Edge and Christian, I believe. They revolutionized a certain style on a mainstream platform with how hardcore and insane you can get, which years later, hilariously enough, Matt Hardy was able to help revolutionize character work whenever he was on TNA and he was broken. And
I love that stuff. I warmed up to it.
Right. It was just like an acquired taste. I feel like most people were probably like, what is going on? But like, you just got to give stuff like that time to build up. You got to.
That was me at first.
Right. You just have a little bit of patience, and it goes a long way because you give the guys time to build themselves up. And look at what happened. It was just golden. I think Matt and Jeff have done a lot, and they helped bring a lot of good attention. The good old Carolina boys, the Hardy boys, and very thankful for everything that they've done and putting their bodies on the line, and even to this day doing some crazy, insane crap on TV and still managing to walk away from it. Bless them. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. And it takes somebody special to be able to get over a spot where you're yelling out, "It's a dilapidated boat!" Like, to this day, people see that and they're just like, oh my God. Like, I know when I first saw it, I'm like, what the hell is this? But the more I watch it, kind of that, like we said, give it time. And I'm like, oh God, that much like, right now, much like R-Truth, freaking gold.
Mm-hmm. R-Truth's been gold for years. And I love that he gets like random chances to shine every now and again, where sometimes he's kind of in the background. He'll make a funny crack or two, and then they'll just push him to the forefront of TV, and he's on TV every week and he's killing it. And R-Truth, another national treasure from North Carolina. So love R-Truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And, talking about, I consider him a national treasure because I gravitate towards this, their style. I talk about those intense styles that, kind of old schoolish. FTR.
Love them. They, I feel like, helped bring the style of wrestling that we in the Carolinas love so much. And they brought that to AEW, where, a lot of AEW stars and superstars like to, they're the bigger banger style of wrestling, right? The competing for stars kind of wrestling. Whereas, FTR, they bring this old school mentality of smash mouth, in your face, just professional wrestling. And we, in the Carolinas, we love that sort of thing. We thrive off of that sort of thing, where it's like storytelling, it's intensity, it's making sure that people feel what we feel. and they've done that tremendously. Cash and Dax are phenomenally talented, and by all accounts, too, through other guys in the Carolinas who have plenty of stories about them, great guys, and they've been hardworking for years, and all the products of their hard work have been seen for millions to witness.
Oh, most definitely. Next up, she has proven very much that sometimes the second generation wrestlers in the business, they have that talk of coming out of the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
She burst out of the damn shadow, Charlotte Flair.
Mm-hmm. It's such a hard concept for a lot of us to understand because we don't know what it's like to be in a wrestling family, to then have to portray yourself as not just another Flair or not just another anybody off the top of your head that you can think of second, third generation wrestlers. Charlotte Flair, she arguably is one of the better women's performers in the world, and one of the better performers in the world. Like, people can hate on her as much as they want to, but whenever she comes back, you're still watching the program. You're still watching what she's doing. And a lot of her matches, one of my favorite matches from WrestleMania a couple years back was her and Rhea Ripley for the championship. They beat the snot out of each other. They wrestled with intensity. And by the end of the match, I was into it. And I was out of my seat and I was losing my mind because of just how believable and epic it was. And I wasn't sitting there thinking to myself, oh, that was Ric Flair's daughter. Amazing. I was sitting there going, that was Charlotte, that was Rhea, and they just killed it.
So, yeah, that they did. Mm-hmm. And hell, the whole, women main event in WrestleMania, mm-hmm. and like, good Lord, like thinking back, growing up, and I don't want to, people can twist stuff the wrong way, but growing up, women's wrestling was kind of the bathroom break for wrestling shows. Now, and not to say there weren't talented females out there at the time, it's just that was the attitude that, not just a lot of fans, but a lot of promoters kind of made it the bathroom break. Now, you really get them to shine. There's so many out there that, much like Charlotte, or like not just as good, sometimes often so better than some of the men's matches on the card.
I agree. I fully agree. I know a lot of women's wrestlers around here especially are some of the hardest working performers, just regardless of gender or sex. They are just the hardest working performers I know. They put so much into it. They study so much. They ask so many questions. Sometimes at one point wrestling could have been a guy's world and it was a man's world, but now it's a lot more open. And, like the whole adage of wrestling is for everyone, that goes for, allowing other people to step up into the spotlight, which guys like myself, not to white knight, not to throw out any sort of ego, but like I 100%, if you're a better performer than me, you deserve to be in the main event. You deserve to be in the championship matches. And especially if like the women's match on the card is going to be the best one, better spotlight that one, or the rest of us are going to be really mad that we had to follow it. So,
hey, and that's the thing that, oh God, what was it? I just watched the Undertaker's podcast where he had his wife Michelle McCool on, and she talked about how they one time got told not to do this or that thing, punches and kicks or something, and somebody, because they were getting told that they were looking better at it than the guys on the show, and I forget if it was Jericho or somebody else that she mentions that said, man, if they're doing a better job at it than some of the guys on the card, that's not their fault. It's the damn other guys on the damn card.
Right. If the women are outdoing you, then be better. Work harder. Like, put in more effort. What's so hard about
Exactly.
that?
Exactly. Last but not least for the name game here, we talked about big meaty men slapping meat. Well, former guest of mine, now going back by Bronson Reed, he had that. I loved the monster against monster matches he had with the monster among men, Braun Strowman.
Absolutely. Another good old country boy. I believe Braun Strowman does have a North Carolina tattoo on him as well. So that's nice. Carolina pride. He's such an enigma to me too, because when I was a fan before I was a trained professional wrestler, I was a huge fan of Braun Strowman, as a lot of people were, and it felt like there were so many times where the iron was hot, and it was like he's the best thing on this program, and it's not because he's technically sound, it's because he's big, he's scary, and he beats people up. That's wrestling. We love it, and I feel like there had been so many times where the trigger should have been pulled to put Braun Strowman in the spotlight, and unfortunately, as history shows, didn't happen. But he was put in some prominent positions, which is great. I think his stuff this year has been really underlooked. Or overlooked rather. Overlooked is the word I was looking for there. Yeah, he's been putting out really good stuff. He's been working hard. Even when someone's music hits, and you just get this feeling of, oh God, that alone just sells. If the music hits and you get a reaction, golden.
That Road Warrior pop.
Absolutely. I love Braun Strowman. I'm a big fan. I think he's phenomenally talented, and I don't know if I read somewhere. I tend to avoid internet articles and spoilers a lot. I think maybe he said something about maybe getting injured. I hope not. I hope he's not off TV, because him and Bronson killed each other, and it was such good TV.
Oh yeah.
I want both men to be featured as much as possible. So hopefully everybody's okay. But
oh yeah, definitely between those two guys, speaking of a whole bunch of the returns that have happened in the last couple of years, those two in particular were two that I was like, oh damn. And not just because I had Bronson Reed on the show, one of my early big names when he was going in between TNA and New Japan. He had a stop for my friends that, they're pro wrestling ventures now, but they were Warrior Wrestling. They had a stop in St. Louis, and I got invited to be a part of the Fan Fest and go to the show. And he actually agreed to do a shorter version of the podcast, like from right after the Fan Fest ended to right when it's like, okay, I have to go put on my gear. And I'm like, holy crap.
That's awesome.
I am sitting here talking to a guy that has literally been a featured match at the Tokyo Dome against Okada. And like, holy, me starting the podcast never would have thought anything like that would ever have come up.
It's wild. It brings some insane moments, man. It's crazy.
So I've had some insane ones with Ring of Honor having Terry Silken of all people on. That was insane. Cheeseburger, me being a fan of the deathmatch style, that intense style, having some of like the people that would often be on most people's Mount Rushmores of that style. I've had a chunk of them on, and I'm just to this day, if you would have told me growing up in high school that someday I would be talking to some of these people of that stature and putting shine on anybody on the independents outside of their area, I would have thought you were fucking insane. because I was that shy kid that just didn't talk all that much.
Yeah, I can level with that a lot. Like a recent experience for me this year was getting a step into the ring with Austin Aries of all people. That's somebody that I watched when I was younger, and I watched him, win the world championship in TNA and have that run, and I just watched him as a fan, and then got to step in the ring and face off with him one on one, and people talk about imposter syndrome a lot, and I never really experienced it until that moment personally, where looking at him, I thought to myself, I'm not wrestling him, right? Like this isn't real. And then the match happens, and then after the match, you just kind of sat back and thought, huh, that's wild. That's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. I identify that completely with how I felt making my commentary debut. I was like, still like, I felt like I got a little bit of a shaky start when the show started because I was still in the holy shit, this is actually happening. And boom, once I got in my rhythm, I was fine. But that initial like, oh, this is legit happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now I got some random questions, some wrestling related, some not. Some might have absolutely nothing to do with anything we've talked about so far. So, first one, the one that I always lead off with because it leads to some stories that I just love. Craziest in-match moment for you?
I think the craziest in-match moment. God, there's so many. That's hard to narrow down. That is so hard to narrow down. There's one where recently in September, wrestled against somebody that I broke into the business with. His name's Cam Jackson. Known him for well over a decade. Been best friends for a very long time. He hit me with a fish. And you don't have to, you heard that correctly.
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, a fish, a literal fish. To which the audience was ever so, what is that? And the craziest part was afterwards, and I picked up the fish and kissed it. And all 300 people said, "Oh, you sick," So yeah, that was a pretty big one. Haven't ever soiled myself when wrestling, so I don't have any stories in that regard. None of those. I'm clean. There's a man known as Jackson Drake who wrestles out of the Carolinas. Is phenomenally talented. I foresee him being signed to TV sometime in the very near future. He kicked me so hard that I may or may not have lost consciousness for just an ever so split second. That was the first time that had ever happened. And I remember thinking to myself, time to go to bed. Let's see. God, there's so many. Only 6 years. It's very limited experience, but just thinking back to all the insanity that's happened. Oh, yeah. I wrestled sunburned recently as well.
Oh, God. Ow.
Yeah. Suntan lotion, everybody. Even at beach shows, suntan lotion. Especially for people of Celtic origin like myself, where your skin is super susceptible. Yeah, super susceptible to sunburn. Don't think that you're better than nature because you'll lose. That hurt a lot, but
I can imagine. And it's funny you bring up the spoiling yourself thing and that not happening. This it reminded me of a story I heard with somebody I know that they wanted to do this trick in a match where they had a melted candy bar that they had in a plastic bag in their trunks. They stuck their hand down, came out with what looked like shit on their hand, and slapped the guy. Yep, that happened.
And that is creative, but that's going to be a hard pass for me. I'm good. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
amazing.
I don't know if I'm pulling that off, but I've heard some crazy stuff from they had a storyline with the person's mother actually was involved in it,
Mm.
and they like did the I forget what move it was on the mother, but then the wrestler chased him out, and
Mm.
then before you know it, the entire crowd is right behind the other wrestler. And then I've heard stuff from like people getting like stabbed with like a little hokey thing in the ass by some old lady. I've heard about a story from the original ECW where uh, they got told specifically to be careful with the venue, and then they both proceed to end up going through a wall, and Paul Heyman's yelling at them after the match.
Of course.
And then a recent one that to this day, knowing the story behind the situation, it's like,
Mm.
ooh, I don't know if I would have done that. But August Artois, the FIP world champ, was in Puerto Rico, and he told me about wearing a shirt that both in English and in Spanish said "Justice for Brody," and I'm like, oh fuck. He is the promoter has literally called him, telling him that he had been told that if he brings him back, that he's not making it home. I'm
You
like,
know, that doesn't shock me. Knowing August Artois, that does not shock me one bit.
yeah, I've, yeah, that's just like, holy shit. Knowing, being a fan of, Bruiser Brody, like, oh, fuck. Like that, the story behind that situation that makes that so intense has been one of my favorite episodes of Dark Side of the Ring ever.
I was about to say the Dark Side of the Ring episode about Bruisers. It's a really hard watch, but it's a very telling and informational story for
Oh,
anybody that doesn't know it. I mean, buckle up and grab some tissues and all that other good stuff. But it is a really good watch.
oh yeah, like a good watch, but right up there with hard ones to watch, like the Owen Hart accident,
Mm.
or the I think the first two-parter in the whole Benoit incident.
Yep.
All very hard, very intense, somewhat hard to watch, but god damn, they did the stories good.
Absolutely.
Now I display some of my hobbies behind me. What is a hobby you have outside of wrestling, or maybe even in wrestling?
Mm.
But I know wrestling can take up a lot of time, whether on the independents or national TV, because you know it's an ever evolving process. You're always learning, you're always training.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a hobby you have outside of having to do all that?
It's like a hobby. It's a passion. Uh, I am very big into fitness. I'm very big into working out and going to the gym and stuff like that. So I've started recently taking personal training courses as well to get certified in that sort of thing because I just if people are gonna ask me how I get to the way I'm gonna look, might as well get compensated for it.
Very true.
Um, but I will obviously offer advice to people if they so choose to ask. But going to the gym started to become a regular thing for me. I did it most of my life, but it started to become more regular when COVID hit back in 2020. Because what else are you going to do? What else was there realistically to do? So I started really diving into it. And then whenever gyms opened back up officially, started making programs for myself and following suit and trying to eat right and just push for it. And of course, there's negativity that comes with it. There's body dysmorphia. There's, days where you don't want to go. There's days where you don't want to push for it. But it's such a safe haven for someone like myself. And it's such a time to myself where I can put headphones on, tune out everybody else, and just be to myself for an hour 15, however long it takes. And I highly recommend it to people too. You don't necessarily have to be a gym freak or a gym rat or a gym bro or just whatever, but going and just being to yourself is such a therapeutic time where you can just escape everything, If you can't have access to a gym, something that I love doing is, again, putting headphones on and going on a long walk. And you just go outside and you just go walk around in nature. And boy, what a clear head you can have by the end of that.
Oh, oh yeah.
So definitely, I encourage people as much as possible to find some form of exercise or some form of fitness or just something to just not be seated, because a lot of us we're here or we're working with our hands or we're on our feet all day and it's just exhausting. Having that to fall back on is just so nice. It is just such a good moment to just be away.
Oh yeah. And the whole becoming a personal trainer is also a good, backup plan, as they always say with different professions, where like, just in case, with a lot of professional sports, if that ends up falling through, you got something. People are always going to need personal trainers and stuff like that to help them, stay in shape. Lord knows I could use a little bit of it. But
Right.
yeah, no, but hey, the way I look at it is, if somebody can poke fun at me, it's myself. I don't do it with any. I don't do it with any seriousness. I'm always liking to be a good jokester. Me as a fan in wrestling, my whole thing when I go to shows is I want to get somebody to crack. Whether it's a wrestler, photographer, ring announcer, whoever. I want to get somebody to crack. I want to say some off the wall, goofy thing that's just going to. And man, more often than not, I get it done. Like I've even, here local to me, I even got Mike Bennett one time. That was awesome. He in the match, you could tell that like he was trying to hide reacting to it, but I got him. He even acknowledged it after the show, because it was a quiet moment, and I just yelled out, "Adam!" and he just busted out laughing, and I'm like, yes.
Man, on that too, fans, please make noise, please. Like, I don't mean to sit here and beg. I'm not on both my knees begging y'all to do this, but it is so much more satisfactory for people to just not be sitting on their hands. Interact as much as you want, and guys like myself, we will 100% react back, because I would much rather a talkative fan base than people that just get on their phones.
Oh yeah. That is the thing about independent shows. You get that interaction that you would have to probably pay a few $100s to be that close to get that interaction at a national TV show.
Right.
But good Lord, yeah. Like I said, I'm a bit of a jokester because hell, I made this joke in my commentary debut. It was for the debut show of a promotion, but they started making announcements for the second show, and I'm like, my commentary partner just opened the door. I couldn't help myself. He started talking about it sounding like a solid number 2 show, and I'm like, for a second, and I'm like, yeah, because nobody likes a running number 2. And he just looked down like, God damn it. I'm like, yes.
Man, whenever everybody's having fun, the people that are the audience is going to have fun. Like, we see it on national TV too now. It seems like announcers are still calling play-by-play, and they're still, making sure that everyone's watching the action and taking in what's happening. But the in-between stuff and the, just people being comfortable enough to, play off of one another, it's just so much better. It's so much better for the product overall.
Oh yeah. That is very much me. I'm very much, hell, going forward, I'm very much going to be the Pat McAfee of whatever commentary team I'm on. I'm just that random goofball, and I love it. All right. Moving on, talking a lot about different, promotions, different locker rooms. You're around a lot of different people. What is a locker room pet peeve that you have?
I gotta limit it. Let me see how much I can limit it.
Like a couple of them. Like we don't have to go through all of them.
Okay, yeah, all right. We'll just name a few. Not picking up after yourself. Pick up your trash. People that undo their wrist tape and then just throw it to the side. Half drunk water bottles. Like, I don't know who is the psycho that just like takes a sip, puts it down, and says, forget about it. Like, drink the water. Oh my God. Now I'm getting irritated. Uh, Dispose of your trash, please. Wash your gear, please. Febreze is cheap. I carry around a bottle of Febreze with me. Ask, and I will let you get a spray or two. And there's plenty of other people I know too that like clean gear bags and have Febreze as well. Locker room etiquette. I feel like you should. This is just something really specific. If your match is next, I feel that you need to watch the match that's going on. That way you can respect them by not doing what's going on in that match. Because repeats, people are not dumb. People are very open and receptive and understanding of what's going on, especially in today's day and age. So repeats are gross.
No,
I had an instance this past Sunday where I was watching, I saw something happen, I went, I'm not doing that. So, you just have to roll with the punches. You just gotta figure something else out. So that one's very specific, but that's a big one for me that I've really thought about this year.
Oh no, that makes perfect sense because I'm like, okay, similar spots at different points in the show is one thing, but right after the other, you want to limit that as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because if somebody's seeing, one match and then they see a few spots copied from the previous match, it's like, wait, that just happened with the other guys. Why? So limit that as much as possible. A good thing, I think, for anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Clean up after yourselves, clean yourselves, and be respectful of people as well. I think that's probably in totality what I'm getting at is just be respectful, be professional. We're there to put on a show for people. And, if let's say it's a TV show, if a TV show runs the same lines back to back in two different scenes, you're kind of like, well, seen it. If a comedian tells a joke in one set and then they move to the next set and it's the same joke, you're kind of like, well, I heard that one before. So give people different things. Give them different things. There's so much flavor in wrestling now that there's no excuse. Just find something.
It's much like that. Oh, I forget what Simpsons episode it was, but they're going to the Itchy and Scratchy Studios, and it's like in the back, it's like the same art in the that the artist drew, and it's just repeat and like, but they're making a joke of it in the dialogue. So when you were talking about that, it just made me think of that. I got a lot of random Simpsons references in my head at different points. It's nuts.
Simpsons was a prediction show, so that makes sense.
God, yeah. That is wild. It's been wild. All right. Now, with the name of a show like I have, I feel like I have to have this one in here. Favorite drink, and it doesn't have to be alcoholic, but favorite drink, regardless, alcoholic or otherwise.
So, I'm the cop-out guy. Water. Water is my favorite drink. So, that's a very easy statement for me. It's just, I drink literal gallon a day. So, water is my favorite. But speaking of alcohol, I can't wait to be judged on this one. I am a seltzer guy. I am a Truly guy, like White Claws and things of that nature. And the reason why, just let me explain, everybody. Let me explain. I know it's not your tough guy drink. It tastes good, and I don't feel like garbage the next day. I don't feel like horrible. I don't feel hungover. So on the rare occasions that I do partake, it's that because I'm looking to have a good time because I'm not trying to be completely blacked out. I'm trying to, have a good buzz to me so I can enjoy myself
Mm-hmm.
and then wake up the next day and not hate everything, praying to a deity that never happens again. So I am definitely a seltzer guy.
I've had my fair share of those moments.
Mm-hmm. I have as well. And that's why I made the switch because I was like, there's got to be something better. There's got to be something different.
And I mean, I'll admit there are some that taste pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I've definitely had my moments that I try to limit those as much as possible anymore because, good Lord, I remember specifically at my youngest sister's wedding, the last memory I have is of somebody asking me if I was okay to drive home. And I was just like, yep, I'm good. And then I get home. The next thing I remembered was I was back home in my parents' basement, completely changed, laying on the couch. I get up and I'm like, where the hell's my car? How did I get home? I go, my car's perfectly fine, parked along the curb, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm good. I went back to sleep.
God almighty, man. Oh, yeah, I can't do that. I just can't do it. Like, I know that everyone eventually gets to a point where like, maybe I shouldn't do that anymore.
That was definitely one of mine.
Yeah, that's why, I don't trust people in general, just to be perfectly honest. I don't trust the general public. I definitely don't trust me if I don't have any inhibitions or control. So, as much as possible, let me just not be that guy. Let me make sure that I know where I'm at.
Hell, I'll admit fully, I am more of a social drinker anymore, so I can have somebody around me that be like, yeah, you need to be cut off.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Because yeah, me by myself, if I don't know anybody, oh god, that's dangerous. It is dangerous. I will fully admit it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Last but not least here, best advice you have for anybody wanting to get into wrestling?
My first bit of advice, because people have asked me this, even coworkers recently have been like, "Oh, what if I want to get into wrestling?" Hey, my first piece of advice is legitimately like, don't.
I was literally.
But if you really, really want to do it, if you really, truly want to get into it, okay. Next step, find a reputable trainer, find someone that has produced talent that you want to emphasize and emulate, and styles that you want to emphasize and emulate as well. And just, there's no way you can be fully mentally prepared for it. There really isn't. There's going to be long drives. There's going to be long days and nights. There's going to be times where you're sleeping in your car. There's going to be a lot of times where you're driving alone. For me, unfortunately, car loads are few and far between because of the shows I'm on and the places I've got to go. So there's a lot of 8-hour round trips where I'm by myself and I don't get back to my apartment until 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, and it's been 24 hours since I've been up. So you can't really prepare for it. You can prepare for it decently physically. There's a lot of ask for it. There's a lot of cardio. So if you don't like that, I don't know what to tell you. Better suck it up, Buttercup, because you're gonna be running, you're gonna be rolling, you're gonna be breathing heavy, you're gonna be sweating through every layer of clothing. And you bring a second article of clothing, you're gonna sweat through that too. Push yourself, believe in yourself. That was my main issue that I always, get asked about because there's people that are like, so and so says that sometimes you've had confidence issues at one point in time. How did you beat that? The best way I can describe it is you really truly just tap into what you wanted to be whenever you were a fan. So whenever I really started to embrace the idea of being a loudmouth, obnoxious son of a gun that everybody on planet Earth just cannot stand. And they look at his face and say, God, I wish someone would hit him. And I just embraced it. It's been off to the races since then. And it's been nothing but success. So the other thing too, and this is something that it's a little bit more hard for people to get and wrap their heads around. Not everyone's your friend. Not everybody has your best interests in mind. You have to surround yourself with people that you really, truly trust and know are giving you the correct advice and the best steps to take to get to the level that you want to get to. The biggest thing for me on that is I believe it was Triple H who said to Batista of all people back in the day, he told Batista, who was also walking on eggshells and was like, I don't want to piss anybody off. He said, do you want to make friends? Do you want to make money? So you just have to accept that not everyone's going to like you. You got to accept that people are going to hate you. They're going to dislike you. They're going to lie to your face. You just got to find who you trust. And you just got to find who you really are going to be this tight-knit with. And
oh, yeah.
It's a hard circle to find. But when you find that circle, you'll know.
So yeah.
Just keep pushing. Yeah. Keep pushing onwards and upwards.
Mm-hmm. I've definitely used a lot of that myself, even with the podcast, because, yeah, let's just say doing my own review shows with that one friend of mine that I've mentioned before with my 2 cents stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, we kind of piss some people off locally. But the way I think about it is that has become evident lately that it was a very vocal minority. So why am I going to waste my time worrying about a vocal minority when most everybody else is just fine with what I do? And shit, I'm talking to people like yourself, or people from, California, a second home of mine, talking to people that have main evented in the Tokyo Dome, or, been in Madison Square Garden, or all over the place. So why worry about a vocal minority when I got all that?
Well, and people hate on accomplishments a lot. That's another thing too, is there is going to be a very loud set group of people that are going to hate what you're doing because they're not. So don't, as much as this is easier to say than it is to actually do,
yeah, don't
pay any attention. Hear it and say, well, thanks for your hate because it's giving me cash, and move forward.
Oh God, I can't remember who said this, but it fits right in there. That it's like they receive like a hateful tweet or a hateful comment on something, but then they came back and said, thank you for watching.
Yep.
You might have hated it, but you still watched, and that still made me money. So
still gave into the algorithm, like the social media algorithm. You're engaging with it, you're responding to it. So thank you. We love the push. Thank you so much.
Oh, yep. And hell, with wrestling, you're wanting to get those crowd reactions. So whether good or bad, you're still getting that reaction out of them.
Yep.
All right. Well, before we go, where can people find you social media wise, so if they don't already have their eyes on you, they can go ahead and get them there?
Well, if you follow me on all social media, you will find that Drew Hood is the only Drew Hood that is a wrestler. So if you look up Drew Hood on Instagram, on TikTok, on X/Twitter, whatever your taste of it is.
I'm not calling it X.
Yeah, the tweet app. The tweet app for Facebook and YouTube and everywhere else. It is just Drew Hood. All the ads are usually at DH_in_4K. There might be an extra underscore on Twitter. I am not entirely certain. I can't remember exactly, but
I'll look it all up and we'll get it all in the description.
It'll be all there.
No, yeah.
Whenever you put in Drew Hood, I've vanity searched myself at least once a month. I can fully admit it. He's got a big head, big ego. Of course I do. But I do vanity search myself, and you look up Drew Hood, it's right there. So I'm just all over.
Yeah, you look up my actual name, and that's a former Batman comic book artist.
That's sick.
But I've literally looked up there's a former guest of mine that I've looked up, and one of the first, and it still gets a chuckle on me. The first thing that pops up is their episode of my show. And I'm like, yes.
That's success. That's engagement. We love that.
Yes. All right. Well, that is about all I have. I can kind of hear my dog rumbling around upstairs. I better go. He's a full-grown English bulldog, so he's a bit of a tank. I love him to death, but I better go make sure he ain't making a damn mess up there. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me tonight. Best of luck out there on the independent journey. Hell, maybe we'll end up seeing you somewhere else. I look forward to keeping my eyes on you. I hope everybody else is looking forward to keeping their eyes on you too.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir, and thank you for having me on. I'm going to go have a truly to be really, truly drinking at most.
Love it. What crap? Wrong button. See, this is where I get the issue with the fucking